Bonjour, welcome to the 100 Tour de France.
It may be day 2 of the Tour de France, but here in Derbyshire, these guys are lining up for the start of the High Peak road race.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
Good luck, be safe. Hello and welcome to this cycle event for all ages and abilities, and this year there are 80 starters about to race around this 11km circuit in the hills just southeast of Buxton.
The first 5k to Monash is pretty well downhill all the way, but then Horse Lane climbs 80 metres to a mainly flat section that goes past the eventual finish line, before climbing back to the start. And then the riders do it all again and again and again until they reach the finish on lap 6.
But right now the long markers are still on lap 1 and they're climbing up Horse Lane for the very first time today.
Although of course, Jonathan, if any of these riders were in the previous races in 2010, 11 and 12, then they'll know all about it. But as it turns out, this is a first timer. It's Pete Turner of Derby Mercury who's setting the pace for the 26 long markers.
Good morning, Matt. How are you feeling this morning?
Yeah, a little bit nervous, but that's normal on these kind of events.
Yes, this is your first time you've ridden the High Peak road race?
It's actually the third time. I did the first 2 years. I missed last year. Fortunately, that was the year it rained. So this year, hopefully, we've got a good day for it again.
So you've come back for another go?
I'm fancying my chances this year.
Well, the middle markers have amassed now, ready to follow. They're 6 minutes behind the leading group who's just gone off, so they're going to have to work really, really hard today to try and catch them.
Hopefully, yeah, it's a big group, so some good, strong riders. I know a few of these local guys, so we should have a good chance of catching the long markers and hopefully avoid being caught by the scratch group.
Ready to start? Go!
And so the middle markers start off in neutralised format to let the riders get a good look at 2 hazards on the course.
The first is Townhead S-Bend, which comes right in the middle of what is otherwise a pretty long, fast and straight downhill section.
And this year it's followed by a couple of 100 yards of brand new grit, because the road was resurfaced only a couple of days ago.
The race uses relatively quiet rural roads through the beautiful undulating landscape of the High Peak.
But today, the competitors will only have eyes for the road ahead and the bike in front. This year, the scratch group of 26 will set off only 3 minutes behind the middle markers.
So there's a really good chance that some of these riders will be able to break through both the leading groups and make it to the podium.
4, 3, 2, 1, go!
That's timekeeper John Grove getting them started, and we'll stay with this group throughout lap 1 to give you a rider's eye view of the circuit, courtesy of number 90, Sandy Smith.
This is the S-Bend we mentioned earlier, and as you can see it's really well marshalled. But sometimes the riders themselves are their own best eyes and ears.
It's an easy descent now towards Monash, so if it wasn't for that 9-minute handicap to catch the long markers, there's a temptation to sit back and let gravity and the slipstream do all the work. And number 69 Graham Kemp has realised this, and he's upped the pace to bring the group back to life, but he won't be able to do it all on his own.
Teamwork is something that Harry Shackleton of Team Elite mentioned when Liz Long spoke to him earlier.
It's still handicapped, and we never really caught them last year, so it's all whether we can work together as a team before the final lap and then catch them, and then maybe I'll be able to do something. I've got another teammate here, so I'll have to work with him a bit to try and chase him down. It's all about getting that final group working as a unit to chase down the leaders, really.
Well, one thing they'll all be agreed on is that Alison has waved her deneutralising flag and the race now is really on.
After this right turn at Hubbardale, it's another fast 2 kilometres descent down towards Monash. And for number 63, Alex Littlewood from RVO, there's absolutely no time to lose because he's rather keen to catch his long marker father, Ian, also with RVO, who's currently some 5 kilometres ahead.
My dad's in Group 1, I'm going to try and work for him really. Try and get him a good result, see what happens.
Well, he's 9 minutes behind me,
Right.
so I've got a bit of a head start. So hopefully I'm going to stay away from him.
Approaching Monash and this left turn into Horse Lane is the low point of the circuit, being 110 metres down from the start. So now the riders get climbing.
And hopefully by the end of lap 6 nobody will have needed any of the services provided by the Red Cross. But of course this ambulance of theirs is following the riders round just in case there are any mishaps during the event.
This is Ben Trotter of Macclesfield Wheelers leading the scratch pack up the first part of Horse Lane.
The road gently undulates until 2/3 of the way along it drops down past a farmyard before the riders have to dig in for a 1 in 12 climb up to the end of Horse Lane. And as the race progresses, this is one of the sections where strong legs and willpower can make all the difference. So it's a popular place for spectators. And this year, as well as friends and families, there are several groups of youngsters on their Duke of Edinburgh expeditions who have paused for a breather to cheer the riders on.
We have a great band of volunteer marshals from many of the local clubs who really make sure this race goes off safely.
Harry Shackleton leading the scratch pack as they go past the Sheldon turn and climb gently onto the long level straight where they'll eventually find themselves sprinting to the finish line. But that's not until they're on lap 6, and that's the best part of 60 kilometres ahead. And as they approach our camera at Rockfield House, halfway up the hill that takes them back to the start of the circuit, it's number 67 Dan Blackwell who's at the helm.
The climb continues for about another kilometre at about 1 in 20, and then after the 360 metre summit, this sharp left-hander marks the start of the next lap.
And these guys have made really good time, knocking 2.5 minutes off their 9-minute handicap. And the middle markers are now only 5 minutes behind the long markers,
who are now at Monash for the second time, with Pete Turner of Derby Mercury leading the pack into Horse Lane.
As you can see, it's not a simple climb. It undulates, but it sort of undulates in an uphill direction. And now it's number 20 Joe Williams who's driving the train as they steam past our camera. The middle markers are now only 4:47 behind, and here they are just about to take on the big climb at the far end of Horse Lane.
On the front here we have number 43, who's Andrew Capper from Stone Wheelers. He's really made that pace up this hill and taking them around the corner now. And here's a scratch group coming up really strong.
You can see the difference in power as Matthew Bonehill from Stafford Road Club leads the charge.
It doesn't look steep, but it's quite long, and by the time you get to this top corner, those legs will be burning.
And Jonathan, we've just been told that number 86 has come a cropper just before Monash. Told it's nothing serious, but the Red Cross ambulance was on the scene almost immediately.
Oliver Hemstock working hard to pull the middle markers up the long climb past Rockfield House.
But the scratch pack are closing in. And at the start of lap 3, these middle markers, still led by number 56 Oliver Hemstock, are 4.5 minutes behind the long markers. And at that rate, they're not going to catch the leaders.
Now the safety car has pulled off the road, so presumably the scratch pack are getting close.
And indeed, this is their lead car, followed by Richard Priest, our motorbike cameraman. And it's still number 79, Matthew Bonehill, leading the scratch pack, who are bang on target, having reduced their deficit to just under 5 minutes. So right now there's only seconds between the chasing scratch group and these middle markers, led now by Chefrex James Hunt and Keith Ainsworth.
Right in front of our camera, the scratch lead car has to pull over to let number 66 Harry Shackleton power past and bring the two groups together.
And as this newly combined peloton comes over the brow that leads to the climb at the end of Horse Lane, the scratch guys at the rear know that they've got the uphill power, but will they have the space to cut through the middle markers? And perhaps that's why Sandy Smith's helmet cam looks like it's got a bit of a sweat on.
Outside you. Outside.
Number 41 Sean Davenport of Siemens takes a nervous look over his shoulder, but the challenge isn't come from these middle markers at the front of the peloton, but rather from the scratch pack, who have still got the strength to power on down the next dip towards the Sheldon turn, while the middle markers appear to be coasting and getting their breath back.
But the two groups stay together, although now the scratch guys are in the driving seat as they chase down the long markers, who we can pick up as they climb towards the end of lap 3, with Nigel Harrop at the helm.
Great field of riders, tremendous prize list, fantastic refreshments afterwards, and it's one of our, as far as TLI cycling is concerned, it's one of our top events of the year. So delighted to support it and delighted that Peter and John run it every year.
And that's Nigel, presumably spurred on by the thought of a waiting cuppa as he makes the pace for the long markers.
3 and a bit minutes behind them, and there's a 3-man attempted breakaway from the combined pack of scratch and middle markers. But Matthew Bonehill, Dan Blackwell and Ben Trotter are slowly being reeled back in by number 80 Andy Hilton and the rest of the chasers.
And as the long markers pass the halfway point of the race, we can check the gap between them and the chasing group of scratch and middle markers. And it's down to just over 3 minutes, so provided they keep to the scratch pace, we're on course for a very close finish.
On lap 4, our cameras didn't catch any significant developments until the long markers got to Rockfield House, with number 22 Chris Siddall piloting them up the long slope.
2 minutes behind them, the combined peloton of the scratch and the middle markers is just getting to the start of the incline, when Team Elite's Dan Blackwell opens the throttle and makes a break.
The only rider to go with him is number 69 Graham Kemp. Everyone else seems to think that the two have gone too early. But nevertheless, when lap 4 timings come in, this chasing peloton is 2 minutes behind the long markers and 30 seconds behind the breakaway pair, who are racing for all they're worth to jump across to the leading group.
Here, at the far end of Horse Lane, the lap 5 entourage is approaching, and it's led by Paul Gilbert, the lead motorcycle marshal, whose job is to check the route a minute or so ahead of the cyclists. One thing he doesn't have to worry about are potholes, because as you can see, the County Council has been busy recently repairing the frost damage that was caused by the severe winter, which most of this course was blocked by drifting snow.
Anyway, now, 3 months later, these are the long markers.
Gavin Alcock, number 103, was off the front of that main group, really trying to put the pressure on.
But you've got to wonder, Jonathan, whether he's gone too soon. There's still 15k to go.
As they come past the bell, Alcock's back in the ranks, so his breakaway didn't last very long.
But look, Kemp and Blackwell have arrived. 1k further on, and the scratch pair have moved to the front, and they're using their strength to pull away up the hill from the pack.
But VC Lincoln's Keith Middleton is going with them.
And there in the distance, the chasing group of middle markers and scratch guys, but they're still over a minute behind. So it's still Kemp, Blackwell and Middleton as they start lap 6.
And they're followed by Derby's Pete Turner and Bolsover's Pete Clements, who have also broken free from the pack.
And at the S-Bend, it's still Kemp of Graham YRT setting the pace. No change over the new surface through Flag Village.
Pete Turner's now 4 seconds off the lead. Pete Clements 11 seconds, and he's followed now by the lead group, which is down to just 13 other long markers.
And now Danny Blackwell's at the helm as they round the Hubbardale right-hander. Pete Turner's still 4th, although he's dropped a couple of seconds on the leaders.
This is Monash, and Kemp's back at the front as they turn into Horse Lane. And the question is, will Middleton be able to stick to the scratch pair when they start climbing?
Pete Turner went through in 4th place, but Pete Clements has now dropped back into the long marker peloton, where Ian Littlewood's offloading ballast before the final climb.
Halfway along Horse Lane, and the scratch lads haven't been able to shake off their shadow.
And even at the top of the hill, Middleton is still with them.
It looks like we're in for a thrilling 3-bike race to the line.
Pete Turner's still in the mix, and 40 seconds behind the leaders, Sean Madner from Sharrow is piloting a group of 15 long markers up the hill. These guys know that there are 4 riders ahead of them, but there's plenty more prizes up for grabs.
And after another 40 seconds gap, these scratch and middle markers are still on track for some of the age category prizes, so they're not going to give up. It's a case of pride over pain.
Back with the leaders, and Kemp's taking a back seat as they pass the Sheldon turn. 40 seconds later, this is Liverpool's Brian Boyle setting the pace for the long markers.
And now, with about 400 metres to go, the 3 leaders are preparing for the final sprint.
Blackwell's gone first, the others are still with him.
200 metres. Middleton's given up and resigned himself to 3rd place.
Now looking from the finish line, Blackwell and Kemp, good mates but racing rivals. They're both going for it. And on the line, it's Graham Kemp at 1 hour 51.34 seconds. By a length from Danny Blackwell.
And Keith Middleton comes in 3rd.
4th at 35 seconds, it's Pete Turner from Derby Mercury. And he's the one who's been setting the long markers pace for much of the race. And 4 seconds behind him, this pack of long markers, led home by Paul Young and Ian Littlewood, who incidentally was exactly a minute ahead of his son Alex, who was in the big peloton of scratch and middle markers, which came in at 1:39. Now, the man presenting the prizes is Dr. Julian Hull, who had been invited here by organiser John Collins.
Sadly, John lost his wife recently to the ravages of septicemia and septic shock. And what many people don't realise is that this is a big killer. And we try and improve the education of healthcare workers through a Survive Sepsis campaign, because we know if they're picked up early and treated aggressively, the outcome can be very different and much more successful. Thank you very much for your time.
And also we can just round of applause in your appreciation for Peter and John. So moving on to the important bit, the prize winners. In 6th place, Ian Littlewood from RVO. 5th place, Paul Young from Shefrake. In 4th place, Peter Turner from Derby Mercury. In 3rd place, Keith Middleton from VC Lincoln. In 2nd place, Daniel Blackwell from Team Elite. This year's overall winner, Graham Kemp from Graham Way RT.